Most people think the future of cars is already decided. Electric vehicles won, engines lost. But what if I told you that the world's most iconic American car company just flipped that script overnight? While Tesla and BYD are racing to push batteries, charging, and silence, GM just did the opposite. They dropped a brand new petrol V8 engine in the middle of the EV revolution. And not just any engine, a monster built for raw power, speed, and a sound that rattles your chest. So here's the real question. Did GM just make the biggest mistake in automotive history? Or did they expose a flaw in the EV dream that nobody wants to talk about? Think about it. For years, the story has been simple. Electric vehicles are the future and petrol engines are fossils of the past. Governments are banning gas cars. Automakers are pouring billions into battery plants, and the message has been drilled into you. Engines are dead, get used to it. But here's the twist. Reality doesn't match the hype. Charging anxiety still keeps drivers awake at night. Long-distance road trips? Still a gamble. Cold winters drain batteries like water through a sieve. And when it comes to heavy trucks or remote regions, electric power just doesn't cut it. That's where the villain of this story appears. The myth that EV adoption is smooth, inevitable, and unstoppable. And GM, instead of bowing to that myth, just threw a grenade into the middle of the narrative with its new V8. So now the stakes are clear. This isn't just about a new engine. It's about whether the future of cars is already locked in, or if GM just cracked the door open for a different ending. And to break it down for you, here are 10 powerful reasons why GM's V8 gamble could change the auto industry. Every car company today is obsessed with proving how electric they are. They brag about battery factories, charging networks, and how fast their EV can sprint to 60. But GM just looked at that stampede, turned around, and walked the other way. This wasn't a small move either. Launching a brand new V8 in 2025 is like showing up to a tech convention with a roaring jet engine while everyone else is whispering about quiet laptops. It's loud, it's bold, and it forces everyone to stop and stare. Here's why this matters. Companies that go against the grain are either remembered as visionaries or disasters. Apple betting on the iPhone while Nokia laughed. Tesla betting on EVs when GM itself killed the EV one. The contrarian move always looks insane until it works. So the real question is GM crazy for launching this engine? Or are they seeing a truth the rest of the industry is blind to? Because if they're right, the EV race isn't as settled as you've been told. And that takes us straight to the next reason. Why the electric dream still has cracks no one can ignore. On paper, EVs look unbeatable. Instant torque, zero tailpipe emissions, smooth, silent acceleration. It sounds like the future you've been promised. But here's the problem. When you step outside the glossy ads, reality hits hard. Charging still feels like a chore. Even the fastest stations can't compete with the 5 minutes it takes to fill a gas tank. And what if you're in the middle of nowhere? Good luck finding a charger before your battery hits zero. Then there's winter. In freezing conditions, EV range can drop by as much as 40%. Imagine planning a trip only to realize the cold just stole half your battery. Not exactly confidence-inspiring. And let's talk cost. EV batteries are insanely expensive. Replacing one can cost more than an entire used car. Add in questions about how long those batteries last, and suddenly the cheap-to-run argument feels a lot shakier. This is why millions of drivers aren't sold yet. They don't hate EVs, they just don't trust them for every situation. And GM knows it. By rolling out a new V8, they're speaking directly to that doubt. The unspoken reality that EVs haven't actually solved every problem. But wait! This next part changes everything. Because beyond the doubts, there's one thing electric cars still can't replicate: the raw punch of power. Ask any truck driver or muscle car fan what they want most, and the answer isn't quiet efficiency. It's raw, unfiltered power. The kind you can feel in your chest when you press the pedal. The kind that makes hauling a trailer or overtaking on the highway effortless. And that's where GM's new V8 flexes its muscle. We're talking 401 horsepower and 629 newton meters of torque. Numbers that aren't just for bragging, they translate into real work. This engine can tow, haul, and climb in ways electric motors still struggle with, especially over long distances. Here's the key difference. EVs deliver quick sprints but heavy-duty power over time. That's still V8 territory. It's the difference between a sprinter exploding off the line and a heavyweight wrestler who can dominate round after round. And let's not forget the feeling. EV acceleration is fast, but it's silent, almost sterile. A V8 doesn't just move you forward, it growls, it shakes. It reminds you that something mechanical and alive is happening under the hood. It's a sensory experience no EV has been able to match. So while the EV world promises efficiency, GM is reminding everyone of the thrill that first made people fall in love with cars. And that thrill isn't just emotional, it's getting smarter too. Because the new V8 isn't stuck in the past. It's packing technology that makes it leaner, cleaner, and far more efficient than you'd expect. The biggest knock on V8s has always been the same. They guzzle fuel, they're dinosaurs. But GM's new V8 flips that story on its head. This isn't the gas-hungry beast from the 1970s. It's been re-engineered for a smarter era. How? First, direct fuel injection. Instead of wasting fuel by spraying it broadly, this tech delivers it with pinpoint accuracy straight into the cylinder. The result? More power, less waste. Then there's variable valve timing, basically giving the engine a brain, adjusting itself so you get peak performance, whether you're crawling in city traffic or flying down an open highway. But here's the real kicker. Thermal management and computer-controlled fuel delivery. That means the engine only burns what it needs, when it needs it. Think of it like going from a clunky flip phone to a modern smartphone. It does more but smarter, and with far less drain. And the numbers prove it. This V8 is significantly more efficient than its predecessors, meaning you don't just get raw muscle, you get power without as much punishment at the pump. Not perfect, but a serious step forward. So here's the twist. While the world writes off petrol engines as outdated, GM is showing they can evolve. Cleaner, sharper, smarter. Which leads to the next reason this gamble matters. Because power and efficiency are great. But cars aren't just machines. They're memories, their identity. And the V8 has something electric motors can't touch. Emotion. Here's something no EV ad will ever admit. Cars aren't just transportation, they're identity. They're tied to your childhood memories, your first road trip, the sound that made you fall in love with driving in the first place. And that's where the V8 wins in a way no battery ever could. The deep rumble when you turn the key, the vibration through the steering wheel, the roar that echoes off city streets or country roads. It's not just noise, it's a heartbeat. It tells you the machine is alive. Ask yourself this. Would the Ford Mustang, the Dodge Charger, or even GM's own Corvette have become icons if they whispered instead of roared? Of course not. That sound is culture. It's music to gearheads. It's why people stop and turn their heads when a V8 growls by. General Motors understands this better than anyone. By reviving the V8, they're not just selling horsepower, they're selling history, emotion, and pride. They're tapping into something electric cars can't replicate. The feeling that your car isn't just moving you, it's speaking to you. But here's the catch. Emotion alone doesn't win markets. Electric vehicles are growing fast in the US and Europe, but step outside those regions and the story changes. Which takes us to the next reason, the global reality that makes GM's gamble look a lot smarter than it seems. It's easy to believe the EV revolution is unstoppable if you only look at California, Europe, or China's megacities. But step outside those bubbles, and reality looks very different. In large parts of South America, Africa, the Middle East, and even rural North America, charging networks are almost non-existent. Roads stretch for hundreds of miles with no fast charger in sight. In these markets, an electric truck isn't just inconvenient, it's impossible. That's why GM's move makes sense. They don't just sell cars in New York and Los Angeles, they sell in Brazil, in Saudi Arabia, in Canada's frozen north, places where people still rely on fuel that can be found on every corner. Places where a V8 isn't nostalgia, it's survival. Here's the kicker. GM sold over 6.3 million vehicles in 2024, with a massive chunk outside the US. If they abandoned petrol engines entirely, they'd leave millions of customers stranded and billions of dollars on the table. So while other automakers put all their eggs in the EV basket, GM is hedging its bets with a global strategy. They're asking a hard question that others ignore. What about the parts of the world where EVs simply can't work yet? And that ties directly into the next reason, because this isn't just about geography, it's about risk. And GM knows putting everything on EVs alone is a gamble they're not willing to take. Think about this. If every car company bets everything on EVs, they're betting everything on one fragile supply chain. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, rare earth metals pulled out of the ground in a handful of countries, shipped across the world, refined in just a few facilities. One disruption, political conflict, price spike, or shortage, and the entire EV industry can grind to a halt. GM knows this. That's why their V8 launch isn't just nostalgia, it's insurance. By keeping petrol power alive alongside EVs, and even leaving the door open for hydrogen or biofuels, GM spreads its risk. If one technology stumbles, another carries the load. It's the same principle you use in your own life. You wouldn't put your entire savings into one stock, right? You diversify. GM is doing the same with its future. Electric vehicles for the cities, V8s for the trucks, and maybe hydrogen tomorrow. It's a portfolio, not a gamble. And here's the atomic takeaway. While other automakers are sprinting down a one-lane road, GM just built itself a multi-lane highway. That flexibility could be the difference between surviving the next supply shock or collapsing under it. But diversification isn't just about risk. It's also about image. And GM knows the V8 is more than an engine. It's a cultural icon. Which brings us to the next reason, the emotional branding power this move unlocks. For years, EV makers have had one unbeatable talking point: we're clean. Engines are dirty. It's the ultimate villain versus hero framing. But look closer, and the story isn't that simple. Building an EV battery requires mining massive amounts of lithium, cobalt, and nickel, industries linked to deforestation, toxic waste, and dangerous labor conditions. And when those batteries wear out, recycling them is still expensive, inefficient, and in many cases, unsolved. That green image suddenly looks a lot darker. Meanwhile, modern petrol engines aren't what they used to be. GM's new V8 comes with advanced emission systems, tighter fuel controls, and smarter efficiency tech that makes it far cleaner than the gas guzzlers of the past. It's not spotless, but it's not the smoke-belching monster people imagine either. Here's the contrast that creates suspense. EVs may look eco-friendly at the plug, but their hidden costs are massive. And GM's V8 may look old school, but it's far cleaner and smarter than its critics admit. So the question flips, are EVs really the only environmentally responsible choice? Or has GM just exposed the weak spot in the green narrative? And that ties straight into the next reason, because beyond the environment, there's still the issue of markets. The V8 isn't trying to win everyone. It's designed to dominate the spaces EVs can't touch. Not every driver needs the same kind of car. Daily commuters in cities want quiet, efficient EVs for short trips. But if you haul equipment, tow trailers, or live in wide-open country, a silent EV isn't just inconvenient, it's a liability. That's why GM aimed its new V8 straight at heavy-duty pickups and SUVs like the Chevrolet Silverado HD and GMC Sierra HD. These aren't toys, they're workhorses for construction crews, farmers, and businesses that need reliable muscle every single day. Try pulling a horse trailer through mountain passes with a battery that loses range in the cold. You'll see the problem instantly. And then there's the performance niche. Muscle cars and sports cars, the Camaro, the Corvette, aren't just about speed. They're about the roar, the identity, the feel. Switch those to full EV and you risk losing the very soul that made people buy them in the first place. Here's the atomic truth. The V8 doesn't need to dominate every market. It just needs to hold the niches EVs can't conquer. And those niches are huge, profitable, and filled with loyal customers who won't trade sound and strength for silence. But GM's move isn't only about serving markets, it's about reshaping its image. Which takes us to the final reason this engine matters: the brand masterstroke that ties everything together. In business, perception is power, and GM knows that better than almost anyone. By launching a brand new V8 in the middle of the EV frenzy, they didn't just build an engine, they sent a message. That message: we aren't followers, we're leaders. While every other automaker tries to prove they're more electric than the next, GM stands out by giving customers both. Electric vehicles for the future, V8s for the faithful. It's not just diversification, it's dominance of the narrative. Think of it like this: Tesla sells innovation, Ford sells legacy, but GM, with this move, they sell choice. And in a world where customers feel pressured into EVs, choice is a breath of fresh air. Here's the atomic punch. GM just reminded the world that it doesn't need to chase trends to stay relevant. It can shape them. By keeping the roar alive while others go silent, GM positions itself not as yesterday's company, but as tomorrow's wildcard. And that leads us to the big question we've been building towards since the start. What does all this mean for the future of cars? That's where the conclusion hits. So did GM just kill the EV revolution? Not quite. But what they did prove is this: the future of cars isn't a straight line. It's not EVs or engines. It's a tug of war between technology and tradition, between silence and sound, between cold efficiency and raw emotion. GM's new V8 doesn't erase electric cars. It exposes their limits. It doesn't stop the EV wave. It shows there's still room for the roar of combustion alongside it. And for millions of drivers who still crave that sound, that power, that identity, GM just gave them a reason to believe the engine isn't dead yet. Here's the takeaway you can share in one line: EVs may own the headlines, but GM just proved the roar the V8 still owns the road. The battle for the future isn't over, it's only getting started. So if you want to stay ahead of the biggest moves in the auto world, hit that subscribe button right now, because the next revelation could change everything you think you know about cars.